The UES Discovery drifted through the darkness of space, its sensors scanning the unknown region beyond humanity's explored territories. Captain Jake Morris stood on the bridge, watching the stars through the main viewport. After 200 years of being confined to their own solar system, humanity had finally cracked the secret of faster-than-light travel. This was their first deep space mission, and Jake felt the weight of history on his shoulders. "Captain, we have a contact," said the sensor officer, her voice tight with tension. "Ship approaching at high speed. Design unknown. It is definitely not human." Jake's heart raced. Humanity had always wondered if they were alone in the universe. Now it seemed they had their answer. All stations to alert. Communications, prepare first contact protocols. Let's make a good impression. Dr. Sophie Clark hurried to the bridge, her datapad clutched in her hands. As the ship's xenobiologist and first contact specialist, this was the moment she had trained her entire life for. Remember, we should assume nothing about their culture or intentions. Be respectful. Be calm. The alien ship appeared on their screens. It was massive, easily 5 times the size of the Discovery, with sleek blue and silver armor that seemed to shimmer in the starlight. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. A transmission came through. The alien language was complex, musical almost, but the Discovery's computer began working on a translation. Within minutes, communication was established. "Unknown vessel, you have entered territory claimed by the Galactic Coalition," the transmission said. "Identify yourselves immediately." Jake cleared his throat and spoke carefully. "This is Captain Jake Morris of the United Earth Ship Discovery. We come in peace from the planet Earth. We mean no harm. This is humanity's first contact with another species, and we hope to establish friendly relations." There was a long pause. Then the alien ship responded. "Earth, we have detected your planet. You will prepare to receive our ambassador. Cooperation is expected." The way they said cooperation made Jake uneasy, but he agreed. A shuttle launched from the alien vessel and docked with the Discovery. Jake, Sophie, and a security team waited in the docking bay as the airlock opened. The alien who stepped through was tall, perhaps 7 feet, with blue skin and elegant features. He wore robes that looked expensive and moved with the confidence of someone used to being obeyed. Behind him came 2 guards in armor, carrying weapons that hummed with barely contained energy. "I am Ambassador Krelix of the Zephyrian Diplomatic Corps," the alien said, his voice now perfectly translated by a device on his chest. "I speak for the Galactic Coalition, the governing body of this region of space." Jake extended his hand in greeting. Krelix looked at the hand with something like disgust and did not take it. Jake lowered his hand, feeling embarrassed and confused. "We are honored to meet you," Sophie said, stepping forward. "We have so many questions about the galaxy, about other species. This is an incredible moment for humanity." Krelix looked at her as one might look at an insect. "Your enthusiasm is noted but inappropriate. You are here to receive the Coalition's judgment, not to ask questions." The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Jake felt his jaw tighten. "Judgment? We have not done anything wrong. We are simply exploring." "You exist in Coalition space without permission," Krelix said flatly. "Your species has been evaluated based on your technology, culture, and potential threat level. You have been classified as Category 7, the lowest tier. This means you are considered barely worthy of acknowledgement." Sophie looked shocked. "But we have not even had a chance to present ourselves properly. How can you judge an entire species so quickly?" Krelix finally showed emotion, a thin smile that held no warmth. "We have observed your world for the past 6 months since you first achieved faster-than-light capability. We have monitored your broadcasts, studied your history, analyzed your technology. The evaluation is complete and final." He pulled out a data device and began reading from it in a bored tone. "The Galactic Coalition hereby decrees the following terms for Earth's existence in Coalition space. First, Earth will pay annual tribute consisting of rare metals, biological samples, and technology. Second, humanity is forbidden from colonizing any world without explicit Coalition permission, which will be granted rarely if at all. Third, all human vessels must yield right-of-way to Coalition ships at all times. Fourth, humans may not carry weapons of any kind while in Coalition space. Fifth, human representatives must show proper deference to all higher category species, which means everyone." Jake felt anger building in his chest. "These are not terms of friendship. These are terms of slavery." "You may call them what you wish," Krelix said with a shrug. "They are the law. You will obey or you will be punished. Category 7 species do not negotiate. They obey. We would like to speak with someone higher in your government, Sophie tried. Surely there has been some misunderstanding. If we could just explain our perspective. Krelix's expression hardened. You dare question the Coalition's judgment? You dare suggest that primitives might have perspective worth considering? He gestured to his guards. Remove them from my presence, and inform your leadership that they have 1 Earth month to accept these terms. If they refuse, we will return with warships and the consequences will be severe. The guards raised their weapons. Jake's security team tensed, hands moving toward their own sidearms. For a moment, violence seemed inevitable. Then Jake raised his hand to stop his people. Stand down. We are leaving. As they backed out of the docking bay, Krelix called after them. Remember this moment, humans. Remember that in the galaxy, the strong rule and the weak serve. That is the natural order. The sooner you accept it, the less painful your future will be. The Discovery broke away from the Zephyrian ship and set course for Earth. The bridge was silent except for the hum of engines. Jake sat in his command chair, his mind racing. Finally, Sophie spoke. They cannot be serious. They cannot expect us to just accept slavery. They are serious, Jake said quietly. They have done this before, probably to hundreds of species. To them, this is normal. This is how the galaxy works. Then the galaxy is broken, Sophie said with anger in her voice. The journey back to Earth took 2 weeks. Jake spent that time preparing his report, knowing that the news he brought would change humanity's future forever. They had reached for the stars, hoping to find friends, find wonders, find a place in a larger community. Instead, they had found masters who expected them to kneel. When the Discovery finally entered Earth orbit, Jake immediately transmitted his report to United Earth Command. Within hours, he was summoned to appear before Admiral Patricia Lang, the head of Earth's space military forces. Admiral Lang was a woman in her 50s with gray hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. She had spent 30 years in military service and commanded respect from everyone who met her. She listened to Jake's report without interruption, her expression growing darker with each word. They think they can just walk in and tell us how to live, Lang said when Jake finished. They think we will accept this because we are new to space, because we are weak compared to them. Admiral, their ship was incredibly advanced, Jake said. If they have more like that, and I assume they do, we cannot fight them. Our weapons would barely scratch their hull. Our fastest ships are slower than theirs. Technologically, we are children compared to them. Maybe, Lang admitted. But children grow up, and sometimes, children refuse to obey when the orders are wrong. She stood and walked to the window, looking down at Earth below. This planet has seen empires rise and fall. We have fought tyrants before. We know what happens when good people choose to surrender rather than fight. You are not seriously considering going to war, Jake said, shocked. Admiral, we would lose badly. Perhaps, Lang said. Or perhaps we would surprise them. But that decision is not mine alone to make. The United Earth Council will decide humanity's response. I will present them with the options. 3 days later, the council met in emergency session. The debate lasted 18 hours. Representatives from every nation on Earth argued passionately. Some urged acceptance, claiming that humanity needed time to build up their strength before challenging the coalition. Others argued that accepting slavery now would mean accepting it forever. Finally, President Julia Hayes called for a vote. The chamber fell silent as each representative cast their vote electronically. The results appeared on the main screen. 87 votes to reject the coalition's terms. 13 votes to accept. President Hayes stood and addressed the council. The vote is clear. Earth will not kneel. We will not surrender our freedom to alien tyrants, no matter how powerful they claim to be. Admiral Lang, you are authorized to prepare Earth's defenses. We do not want war, but if war comes, we will face it standing upright, not on our knees. Admiral Lang returned to her command center and immediately began issuing orders. Every shipyard in Earth orbit was converted to military production. Scientists were pulled from civilian projects to work on weapons development. The United Earth Defense Force, previously a small organization focused on asteroid defense and space rescue, became humanity's shield against the galaxy. Ambassador Krelix returned 1 month later as promised. His ship. 6 months had passed since humanity rejected the coalition's demands. Earth had transformed into a fortress during that time. Orbital defense platforms surrounded the planet like a steel shell. Asteroid mining operations worked around the clock to gather materials for the growing fleet. Every person on Earth knew that war was coming, but life continued with desperate normalcy. Commander Ryan Foster stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance, a military frigate assigned to protect humanity's first colony beyond Earth's solar system. The colony on New Terra had been established 3 years ago before first contact, when humanity thought the galaxy was empty. Now 847 colonists lived and worked on a beautiful world 40 light-years from Earth, growing food and building homes, trying not to think about the alien empire that wanted to control them. Ryan looked at the blue and green planet on his view screen and felt a surge of protective determination. These people had left Earth seeking a better life. They had families, dreams, futures. He would not let the Coalition take that away from them. "Commander, we are receiving a priority transmission from the colony," his communications officer said, her voice tight with worry. "Colonial Administrator Grant is requesting immediate contact." Ryan activated the channel. Lisa Grant's face appeared on screen. She was in her 40s, a capable woman who had led the colony since its founding. Now her face was pale with fear. "Commander Foster, our long-range sensors are detecting multiple ships entering the system. Unknown configuration, but they match the descriptions of Coalition vessels. 12 contacts, all large. They are heading toward us." Ryan felt his stomach drop. 12 warships against his single frigate. "Acknowledged, Administrator Grant. Begin evacuation procedures immediately. Get every colonist into the shelters. I am moving to intercept." "Commander, you cannot fight 12 ships alone," Lisa said. "I do not plan to fight them, Administrator. I plan to slow them down and buy you time. Now please evacuate your people." Ryan cut the transmission and turned to his crew. They were young, most of them in their 20s, and he could see fear on their faces. But he also saw determination. "All hands to battle stations. Engineering, give me everything the engines have. Weapons, charge all systems. Communications, send a full report to Earth Command. Tell them what is happening here." Ryan paused, then added quietly, "And tell them we will do our duty." The UES Defiance raced toward the approaching Coalition fleet. On sensors, the alien ships were massive, each one larger than Ryan's frigate. They moved with the confidence of predators who had never faced real resistance. The lead Coalition ship hailed them. The face that appeared on screen was brutish and cruel, belonging to a species Ryan did not recognize. The alien had gray, leathery skin and small, mean eyes. "Primitive vessel, identify yourself," the alien growled. "I am Commander Ryan Foster of the United Earth Ship Defiance. You are approaching a human colony without permission. Turn back now." The alien laughed, a harsh barking sound. "I am War Master Thexel of the Kryn warrior caste. I have been sent by the Coalition to deliver a lesson to your species. The illegal settlement on this world will be dismantled. The colonists will be taken as property of the Coalition, to serve as labor until they have paid for their crimes." Ryan felt rage burn through him. "These are civilians. Farmers, teachers, families with children. They have committed no crime. This world was unclaimed when we settled it." "All worlds are claimed by the Coalition," Thexel said. "Your ignorance of the law does not excuse your violation of it. Now withdraw, or I will destroy your pathetic vessel." Ryan looked at his tactical display. The Coalition ships were spreading out, surrounding his position. Even if he wanted to run, he could not reach New Terra before they intercepted him. His only choice was to buy time. "No," Ryan said simply. "If you want those people, you will have to go through me." Thexel's expression shifted from amusement to anger. "So be it, destroy them." The Coalition fleet opened fire. The UES Defiance's shields lit up as energy weapons hammered against them. Ryan's ship shook violently, alarm screaming warnings. "Return fire! All weapons!" Ryan shouted. The Defiance's missiles and railguns lashed out at the nearest Coalition ship. The human weapons were primitive compared to alien technology, but they were fired with desperation and determination. Several missiles got through the Coalition ship's defenses and exploded against its hull, tearing open armor and venting atmosphere. "We got one," the weapons officer shouted in triumph. But then the other 11 ships opened fire in earnest. The Defiance's shields collapsed under the overwhelming barrage. Energy beams cut through the frigate's armor like paper. Explosions rippled through the ship as systems failed and crew members died at their stations. Ryan held onto his command chair as the bridge filled with smoke. "Damage report. Hull breaches on decks 3 through 7. Life support failing.
Engines offline.
We are dead in space, sir. Ryan looked at his screen and saw the Coalition ships advancing past his crippled vessel, heading for New Terra. He had bought maybe 10 minutes. It was not enough. All hands abandon ship, Ryan ordered. Get to the escape pods. His communications officer looked at him with tears streaming down her face. Sir, the transmission system is still functional. We can send one last message to Earth. Ryan nodded. Then let us make it count. Record this. He activated the recorder and spoke directly to the camera, knowing these might be his last words. This is Commander Ryan Foster of the UES Defiance. We engaged a Coalition fleet at New Terra and have been defeated. They are proceeding to the colony. I do not know what will happen to those people, but I know the Coalition intends to take them as slaves. Earth needs to know that the Coalition does not make idle threats. They are ruthless, powerful, and they will not stop until humanity submits or is destroyed. But we did not go quietly. We made them bleed, and I pray that Earth will make them pay for every drop. His voice cracked. Tell my brother Dan that I am sorry I will not see him again. Tell my parents I died fighting for something that mattered. Tell humanity not to give up. Never give up. The transmission was barely sent before the Coalition delivered the killing blow. Energy beams punched through the Defiance's reactor core. The ship exploded in a brief, brilliant flash. Commander Ryan Foster and his entire crew died instantly. The Coalition fleet continued to New Terra. On the surface, Lisa Grant watched the sky and saw the burning wreckage of the Defiance falling like a meteor. She knew then that they were out of time. All colonists to the shelters, she shouted into the colony-wide communication system. This is not a drill. Move now! But there was nowhere to hide from an orbital bombardment. The Coalition ships took up positions above the colony and began firing. Energy beams struck buildings, turning homes and farms into craters. The colonists ran in panic, trying to reach safety that did not exist. Lisa helped a mother and her 2 children into an underground shelter, then turned to go back for more. She never made it. A beam from orbit struck the administration building where she stood. The entire structure disappeared in fire and smoke. After 30 minutes of bombardment, the Coalition ships stopped firing. They had destroyed all the colony's infrastructure but deliberately avoided killing all the colonists. That was not the point of this exercise. The point was submission and punishment. Troop ships descended from orbit. Kryn soldiers, 7 feet tall and covered in armor, stormed through the ruins of the colony. They rounded up the surviving colonists who were too shocked and injured to resist. Families were separated. The injured were given minimal treatment. The soldiers showed no mercy and no compassion. War Master Thexel stood in the center of the destroyed colony, watching his soldiers herd the humans like animals. He activated his recorder and sent a message back to Coalition High Command. The illegal human settlement has been neutralized. All structures destroyed. 847 colonists captured and secured for transport to labor facility Gamma 9. 1 human military vessel destroyed with all hands. Resistance was minimal and ineffective. Recommend similar actions against other human colonies to discourage further expansion. The colonists were loaded onto prison ships, bound and terrified. They were taken from their homes, from the world they had worked so hard to build, and transported across the galaxy to a Coalition labor camp on a harsh moon orbiting a gas giant. There they would spend years working in mines, alongside thousands of other prisoners from other species who had been punished for various violations of Coalition law. News of New Terra's destruction reached Earth within hours. The long-range transmission from Commander Foster had been received at Earth Command just before his ship was destroyed. Admiral Lang watched the recording 3 times, her expression growing harder with each viewing. She called an emergency meeting of the United Earth Council. When the representatives gathered, she played Ryan Foster's final message for all of them. The chamber was silent except for the sound of some representatives crying. When the message ended, Admiral Lang spoke. This is what the Coalition does to those who defy them. They destroy our colonies. They murder our soldiers. They take our people as slaves. And they truly believe that this will make us afraid, that this will make us surrender. We cannot fight them, one representative protested. You saw what? 2 weeks had passed since the destruction of New Terra. Earth burned with anger and grief, but Admiral Lang channeled those emotions into cold, calculated planning. She stood in the war room, studying holographic displays of coalition territory with General Marcus Webb and her fleet commanders. "We cannot match the coalition in a straight fight," Lang said, her finger tracing routes through enemy space on the display. "But we do not need to. We need to hit them where it hurts, prove that humanity can strike back and rescue our people." General Webb has identified 3 priority targets. General Webb activated new displays. First, a supply depot in the Sigma system. It is lightly defended. Only 4 patrol ships and a space station. The supplies there could fuel our fleet for months. Second, a communications relay in the Beta sector. Destroying it would blind the coalition in that region for weeks. Third, Labor Camp Gamma 9, where our colonists from New Terra are being held. Captain Nicole Barnes, commander of the UES Retribution, Earth's newest warship, studied the information carefully. She was in her late 30s, a career military officer who had spent years in Earth's orbital defense forces. Now she commanded humanity's most advanced ship, built in the frantic months since first contact. "The supply depot is the logical first target," Nicole said, "but I want that labor camp. Our people are suffering there. Every day we delay, more of them might die." "Agreed," Admiral Lang said. "Nicole, you take the primary strike force to the supply depot. 5 ships, including the Retribution. Hit them fast, take what we need, and get out. If we can capture supplies, we extend our operational range significantly." She turned to the other commanders. "Captain Morris, you take 3 ships to the communications relay. Standard hit and run. Captain Torres, you take 4 ships to the labor camp. Break our people out and anyone else you can save. All groups move simultaneously. Force the coalition to respond to multiple threats." Lieutenant Sam Peters, the Retribution's tactical officer, spoke up. He was young, barely 27, but he had a gift for unconventional thinking that Admiral Lang valued highly. "Admiral, I have been studying coalition tactics from the engagement at New Terra. They fight in rigid formations, predictable patterns. What if we use the environment against them? The Sigma system has a dense asteroid field. We could hide there, drift in like debris, then strike at close range." Admiral Lang smiled grimly. "Good. Use every advantage we have. Surprise, creativity, and desperation. Those are our weapons." 3 days later, the UES Retribution and her 4 escort ships arrived at the Sigma system. They emerged from faster-than-light travel on the far side of the asteroid field, immediately powering down all non-essential systems to reduce their sensor signature. "All ships, maintain communication silence," Nicole ordered. "Drift protocol. Let the asteroids hide us." The human vessels floated through the field like ghosts, using tiny thruster bursts to navigate around the spinning rocks. It took 6 hours to cross the field. 6 hours of tense silence where any mistake could give away their position. Finally, they reached the far edge. Through the asteroids, Nicole could see the Coalition supply depot. It was a massive station in orbit around a small moon, with storage facilities and docking ports. 4 Coalition patrol ships circled it lazily, clearly not expecting any threat. "They think they are safe here," Lieutenant Sam Peters said quietly. "They are about to learn otherwise." Nicole took a deep breath. "All ships prepare to engage. Weapons hot. Engines ready. On my mark, we go to full power and fire everything we have." She paused, then spoke clearly. "Mark!" The 5 human warships erupted from the asteroid field like predators from ambush. Engines flared to full power, closing the distance in seconds. The Coalition patrol ships barely had time to react before human missiles and railgun fire slammed into them. The first patrol ship exploded immediately, its reactor going critical. The second managed to raise shields, but the concentrated fire from 3 human ships overwhelmed it within seconds. The third ship tried to run, broadcasting a distress signal. The UES Retribution pursued it, and Nicole gave the order she had been dreading. "Ram them." Her crew looked at her in shock, but Nicole's face was set with determination. "They're calling for reinforcements. We need to stop that signal now. Helm full collision course. All hands brace for impact." The Retribution accelerated directly at the Coalition ship. At the last second, Nicole ordered all power diverted to forward shields. The 2 ships collided with tremendous force. Metal screamed and tore. The Coalition vessel, smaller and not built for ramming, crumpled and exploded. The Retribution suffered heavy damage to her bow but remained operational. "Damage report," Nicole called out through the smoke filling her bridge. "Forward sections compromised. Hull breaches on 3 decks. Casualties reported." But the ship was still flying, still fighting. The fourth coalition patrol ship, seeing the fury and recklessness of the human attack, simply fled into faster-than-light travel. Nicole let it go. They had bigger concerns now. All ships converge on the supply station. Kyle Rogers, your teams are clear for boarding. Kyle Rogers led the Special Forces teams that had been training for exactly this kind of operation. He was a career soldier in his early 30s, tough and professional. His teams boarded shuttles and raced toward the supply station. The station's automated defenses opened fire, but human ships provided covering fire, destroying the weapon emplacements one by one. Kyle's shuttle took hits but made it to the docking port. Breaching charges blew the airlock open and his team stormed inside. The station was defended by robotic systems and a small crew of coalition personnel. Kyle's team fought through corridors, using tactics refined in Earth's military training. They moved fast, used grenades to clear rooms, and showed no mercy to the automated defenses. Within 20 minutes, they reached the station's control center. Kyle planted breaching charges on the door and his team stacked up, ready to rush in. The charges blew and they poured through the smoke. The coalition crew inside surrendered immediately, seeing the heavily armed humans and realizing resistance was futile. Kyle secured them quickly, then accessed the station's computer systems. Captain Barnes, we have control. The station is ours. Nicole felt a surge of triumph. Secure all supplies, and check for prisoners. Kyle searched the station's database and felt his heart sink. Captain, there are holding cells on level 9, showing multiple life signs. He led a team down to the lower levels and found them. Prison cells holding 73 humans, men and women who looked half-starved and terrified. They wore prisoner uniforms and had clearly been mistreated. Who are you? Kyle asked gently, lowering his weapon. An older man stepped forward hesitantly. We are colonists from the ship New Hope. We were captured 8 months ago before Earth even knew the coalition existed. They have been holding us here, using us as labor to load supplies. Are you really human? Are you really here to help us? Kyle felt rage burn through him, but he kept his voice calm. Yes, we are from Earth and we are taking you home. The rescue of those 73 people, who had been prisoners for months while humanity was still ignorant of the galaxy's cruelty, made the entire mission worthwhile. But Kyle discovered something else in the station's holding area. Hundreds of other prisoners from dozens of different species, all captured for minor violations of coalition law, all being used as forced labor. Kyle made a decision. Open all the cells. Everyone gets out, one of his team members protested. Sir, we do not have room for all of them on our ships. Then we will make room, Kyle said firmly. We came here for supplies and to save our people. But if we can save others too, we will. That is what separates us from the coalition. It took hours to evacuate the station and transfer supplies to the human ships. The Retribution, damaged as she was, took on more refugees than her life support was designed to handle. Other ships did the same. When they finally left the Sigma system, they carried rescued prisoners from 30 different species, along with enough supplies to keep Earth's fleet operational for months. News of the successful raid spread quickly. The other 2 human strike forces reported similar success. The communications relay was destroyed, blinding the coalition in that sector. And Captain Torres had successfully raided the labor camp, rescuing Lisa Grant and all 847 New Terra colonists, along with thousands of other prisoners. But the raids came at a cost. 2 human ships were destroyed. 147 crew members died. The Retribution limped back to Earth badly damaged, requiring months of repairs. Admiral Lang met the returning ships personally. She boarded the Retribution and found Captain Nicole Barnes on the bridge, exhausted and covered in soot, but smiling. We did it, Admiral. We proved we can fight back. You did more than that, Lang said, looking at the rescued prisoners being transferred to medical facilities. You showed the galaxy that humanity does not fight just for itself. You saved people from species we have never even met. That matters, Nicole. That means something. In Coalition space, High Chancellor Vortan received reports of the human raids with mounting fury. His advisors assured him it was just a lucky strike, that humanity would be quickly crushed. But Vortan was not convinced. They destroyed our facilities. They killed our soldiers. They freed our... Earth orbit looked like a construction yard that had gone mad with purpose. Hundreds of vessels moved between orbital platforms, asteroid processing stations, and the planet below. Welding torches lit up the darkness, like small stars as workers raced to complete the defenses before the Coalition fleet arrived. Dr. Aaron Blake stood in the observation deck of the primary construction facility, watching the controlled chaos with exhausted satisfaction. He had not slept properly in 2 weeks. His team of engineers and scientists worked in rotating shifts, but Aaron refused to rest while there was more work to be done. "Dr. Blake, you need to sleep," his assistant said gently. "You are going to collapse." "I will sleep when the Coalition fleet is destroyed," Aaron replied, his eyes fixed on a massive weapon platform being assembled nearby. "Or I will sleep forever if we lose. Either way, sleep can wait." The platform he watched was his design, born from desperation and human ingenuity. It was not elegant or sophisticated like Coalition technology. It was brutal and simple. A massive railgun that fired nuclear-tipped projectiles at incredible speed. It could not track fast-moving ships, but it did not need to. Aaron had designed thousands of them, and they would fill space with fire. "How many platforms are operational?" Aaron asked. 3,216, his assistant reported. "Another 500 will be complete in the next week." Aaron nodded. The platforms would buy them time, maybe minutes, maybe hours. Every second mattered. Below, on Earth's surface, Commander Kira Walsh led her fighter wing through another training exercise. The fighters were another Blake innovation, small and fast, little more than cockpits with engines and weapons attached. They were cheap to build and could be produced by the thousands. Kira pushed her fighter through a series of aggressive maneuvers, testing both the machine and herself. She was 32 years old and had been one of Earth's best test pilots before the war. Now she led a wing of 200 fighters, and she knew most of her pilots would not survive the coming battle. "Blue Squadron, tighten that formation," she called over the radio. "You are spacing too far apart. When the shooting starts, you need to be able to cover each other." The young pilots adjusted their positions. Kira looked at their call signs on her display and felt a weight in her heart. Most of them were barely 20 years old. Kids, really. Kids who had volunteered to fly tiny ships against massive warships because someone had to. After the training exercise, Kira landed at the military base and found Admiral Lang waiting for her. The Admiral looked older than she had just weeks ago, the stress of command adding years to her face. "Commander Walsh, walk with me," Lang said. They walked through the base, past bustling activity and organized chaos. Everywhere, people prepared for war with grim determination. "Your pilots are ready?" Lang asked. "As ready as they can be," Kira replied honestly. "They are brave, well-trained, and motivated. But Admiral, they are so young. Most of them have never seen combat. When the Coalition fleet arrives and ships start exploding around them, some will panic, some will freeze, some will die in their first engagement." "I know," Lang said quietly, "but they volunteered knowing the risks. Every person on this planet knows what is coming, and they chose to fight anyway. That courage, that determination, is our greatest weapon." They reached a memorial wall that had been erected near the base headquarters. Names were carved into the stone, all the soldiers who had died so far in the war. Commander Ryan Foster's name was there, along with the crews of destroyed ships and soldiers killed in raids. "We fight for them," Lang said, touching Ryan's name gently, "and for everyone who will come after us. If we surrender, if we give up, then their sacrifice meant nothing. But if we fight, if we make the Coalition pay dearly for every life, then maybe, just maybe, we buy humanity a future." President Julia Hayes addressed the world that evening. Every screen on Earth showed her face as she spoke from the presidential residence. She looked tired but determined, and her words were simple and direct. "Citizens of Earth, I will not lie to you. In 2 weeks, the largest military fleet in galactic history will arrive at our world. They come to destroy us, to punish us for refusing to surrender our freedom. The Coalition expects us to panic, to beg for mercy, to accept slavery rather than face death." She paused, letting her words sink in. "They do not understand us. They do not understand that humanity has faced extinction before and refused to yield. They do not understand that we would rather die free than live as slaves. Our ancestors fought for freedom on every continent of this planet. They died in wars against tyranny, against oppression, against those who claimed the right to rule others through force. We are their children, and we will not dishonor their memory by kneeling now." Her voice grew stronger, more passionate. "The Coalition offers us survival at the cost of our dignity. They offer our children a future as servants to alien masters. I say no. I say that some prices are too high to pay. I say that life without freedom is not worth living. So we will fight. We will show the galaxy what humans are capable of when we fight for our homes, our families, our future. And even if we fall, we will fall standing upright, not on our knees. The speech galvanized Earth. Recruitment centers were overwhelmed with volunteers. People donated their savings to the military effort. Factories worked around the clock producing weapons and supplies. The entire planet united with a single purpose. General Marcus Webb coordinated ground defenses with military precision. Millions of civilians received basic combat training and were organized into militia units. Major cities were fortified with anti-air defenses and underground bunkers. Plans were made for guerrilla resistance that could last years if necessary. Webb met with his commanders in a secure facility beneath the military headquarters. Maps and displays covered the walls, showing defensive positions across the planet. If the Coalition fleet breaks through our orbital defenses, they will attempt to land troops, Webb explained. We will make them pay for every city, every street, every building. Earth has 7 billion people, and every one of them will resist. The Coalition can destroy us from orbit, but if they want to rule Earth, they will have to take it meter by meter, and we will make that so costly that they give up. One of his officers asked the question everyone was thinking. General, can we really win? Webb was silent for a moment. Win, I do not know. But we can make them regret attacking us. We can make them understand that conquering Earth is not worth the cost. And maybe, just maybe, that will be enough. In Coalition space, War Master Thexol watched his assembled fleet with satisfaction. 243 warships from dozens of Coalition species, the largest armada ever gathered for a single battle. 3 dreadnoughts, each one capable of destroying a planet. Hundreds of smaller ships carrying troops and weapons and the full might of a 3,000-year-old empire. Ambassador Krellick stood beside Thexol on the flagship's observation deck. Do you truly need such a large force? They are primitives with barely 30 ships, Thexol growled. Those primitives destroyed our supply depot, freed our prisoners, and inspired rebellion in a dozen sectors. The High Chancellor wants them completely destroyed. No survivors, no mercy. This fleet will ensure that happens. It seems excessive, Krellick muttered. Perhaps, Thexol admitted, but it sends a message to every species in the galaxy. This is what happens when you defy the Coalition. Total annihilation. The fleet began its journey to Earth, moving in perfect formation through faster-than-light travel. Every ship commander knew their role. Every weapon was checked and prepared. The Coalition was bringing overwhelming force, and they expected an easy victory. On Earth, sensors detected the Coalition fleet's approach 3 days before their arrival. Admiral Lang gathered her commanders aboard the UES Victory, Earth's largest remaining warship. The Victory's conference room was crowded with captains and officers, all of them knowing this might be their last meeting. Jake Morris stood near Admiral Lang. He had been promoted to full admiral after his role in coordinating the successful raids. Now he would help command Earth's defense, knowing the odds were impossibly against them. The Coalition fleet will arrive in approximately 72 hours, Lang began, her voice steady and calm. They outnumber us significantly. Our strategy is simple. We fight a delaying action, falling back in stages, making them pay for every kilometer. First line of defense at Neptune orbit, second line at Saturn, third at Mars. Final stand at Earth itself. She activated a holographic display showing the solar system. Dr. Blake's weapon platforms are positioned throughout the system. Our ships will use hit-and-run tactics, never engaging in direct battles we cannot win. Fighters will harass their formations, targeting command ships and supply vessels. We make them bleed all the way to Earth. Captain Nicole Barnes, commanding the repaired Retribution, spoke up. Admiral, even with perfect tactics, we cannot stop that many ships. Eventually they will reach Earth. I know, Lang said. That is why General Webb has prepared ground defenses. If they break through, the war continues on the surface. We fight in the cities, in the mountains, in the oceans. We never stop fighting. We never give up. Jake Morris added, the Coalition expects a quick victory. They expect us. The Coalition fleet emerged near Neptune like a swarm of steel locusts blocking out the stars. War Master Thexol stood on his flagship's bridge, watching the sensor displays with satisfaction. 243 warships under his command, facing barely 30 human vessels. It would be a massacre. All ships advance in formation, Thexol ordered. Destroy any human vessels that engage us. Our target is Earth itself. Admiral Patricia Lang watched the enemy fleet from the bridge of the UES Victory. Her small fleet was positioned behind Neptune, using the ice giant's gravity and magnetic field to mask their exact positions. Steady, Lang said calmly, though her heart pounded. Wait until they commit to their approach vector. The coalition fleet moved forward with the confidence of predators who had never known defeat. They spread into a wide formation, preparing to sweep through the outer system like a wave. Now, Lang ordered, all ships full power. Hit them at extreme range and retreat immediately. 30 human warships suddenly appeared from behind Neptune, firing everything they had. Missiles streaked across space. Nuclear warheads seeking coalition targets. Railguns fired slugs at incredible velocity. Energy weapons lanced out in brilliant beams. The coalition fleet, caught slightly off guard by the sudden aggression, took losses. 3 ships exploded under the concentrated fire. 5 more were damaged, venting atmosphere and debris. But then the coalition returned fire with overwhelming force. Space lit up with energy weapons and explosions. The UES Defender took a direct hit to its reactor and exploded instantly, killing all hands. 2 more human ships were crippled and fell behind as the fleet retreated. All ships fall back to Saturn, Lang ordered, her voice tight as she watched good people die. Maintain formation and keep firing. The running battle across the outer system lasted 12 brutal hours. The human fleet would position themselves, fire a devastating volley, then retreat before the coalition could bring their superior numbers to bear. At Saturn, Dr. Blake's weapon platforms activated, launching nuclear missiles in swarms that overwhelmed coalition point defenses. Commander Kira Walsh led her fighter wing into the chaos, tiny ships darting between massive capital vessels like angry wasps. Her pilots targeted the coalition dreadnoughts, trying to damage their engines and slow them down. Blue 3 on your 6, Kira shouted into her radio, seeing a coalition fighter closing on one of her pilots. She yanked her fighter into a tight turn that would have killed an untrained pilot, the G-forces crushing her into her seat despite the pressure suit. Her weapons locked onto the coalition fighter and she fired, destroying it in a ball of flame. Thanks, Commander, Blue 3 called out, but the casualties mounted. Kira watched her pilots die one by one, their tiny ships no match for coalition firepower. Blue 7 disappeared in an explosion. Blue 9's ship was crippled and went tumbling into space. Gold Leader's entire squadron was wiped out in seconds by a dreadnought's point defense system. All fighters regroup on me, Kira ordered, her voice steady despite the grief tearing at her heart. We are pulling back to Mars. Reform and prepare for the next pass. By the time the fleets reached Jupiter, half of Earth's warships had been destroyed. The coalition had lost 37 ships, far more than they expected, but they kept coming with relentless determination. Jake Morris commanded the rear guard. His ship, the UES Valiant, positioned between the coalition fleet and the retreating human vessels. All power to rear shields, he ordered. We need to buy the others time. Energy beams hammered his ship mercilessly. The Valiant shook and groaned, systems failing under the assault. Jake watched his crew work with desperate efficiency, rerouting power, patching holes, keeping the ship fighting even as it died around them. Sir, shields failing, his tactical officer shouted. Hull breaches on all decks. Keep firing, Jake said grimly. Every second we hold them is another second the others escape. The Valiant took one final massive hit. The explosion tore through the engineering section, venting the entire rear of the ship into space. Jake gave the order he had hoped never to give. All hands abandon ship. This is not a request. Get to the escape pods now. His crew hesitated, not wanting to leave their captain. Jake pulled his sidearm and pointed it at the nearest officer. I said abandon ship. That is a direct order. Move. They moved, racing for the pods. Jake stayed at his station, manually controlling the dying ship, keeping it between the coalition and his fleeing crew. He watched the pods launch and accelerate away, then turned the Valiant one last time toward the enemy. This is for Commander Foster, Jake said quietly, and for everyone else you murdered. He aimed the crippled ship directly at a coalition cruiser and locked the throttle to full. The Valiant, barely holding together, accelerated on a collision course. The coalition cruiser tried to evade, but Jake had calculated perfectly. The two ships collided in a massive explosion that took both vessels out of the fight. Jake's daughter, who commanded a squadron of fighters nearby, watched her father's ship die and felt her heart break. But she did not have time to grieve. She had a war to fight. The fighting reached Mars orbit 30 hours into the battle. Earth's fleet was down to 8 operational warships. The Coalition had lost 59 ships, but still vastly outnumbered the defenders. More of Dr. Blake's weapon platforms activated, turning Mars orbit into a killing field. Admiral Lang stood on the Victory's bridge, her ship battered but still fighting. She had burns on her arms where a console exploded, and her uniform was stained with the blood of a crew member who had died at her feet, but her voice remained steady. "All ships, this is our final line. We hold here as long as possible. When we can hold no longer, we fall back to Earth and make our last stand. It has been an honor serving with you all." War Master Thexal, watching from his flagship, felt a grudging respect for these humans. They had been far more difficult to defeat than he expected. His fleet had suffered casualties that would have broken other species' will to fight. But humans just kept coming, kept fighting, kept dying with weapons in their hands. "Forward units, engage the remaining human ships," Thexal ordered. "End this." The Coalition fleet advanced in overwhelming strength. The final 8 human warships fought with desperate fury, but they were simply outnumbered. The UES Retribution, Captain Nicole Barnes commanding, took concentrated fire from 6 Coalition vessels. Nicole ordered her crew to evacuate, then stayed behind to detonate the ship's reactor manually, taking 2 Coalition ships with her in the explosion. One by one, the human warships fell. The UES Defiance II, the UES Liberty, the UES Courage. Each one fought until they could fight no more. Each one sold their lives dearly. Admiral Lang watched her fleet die around her. The Victory was the last ship left, surrounded by enemies, shields failing, weapons depleted. She knew the end was near. "All crew to the escape pods," Lang ordered. "I will stay with the ship." "No, Admiral," her first officer said firmly. "You are too important. Earth needs you to coordinate the ground defense." "I will stay." Lang looked at the young officer and saw absolute determination. She nodded slowly, knowing they had no time for debate. "Very well. Make them pay." Lang evacuated with the last of her crew, watching through the pod's tiny viewport as the Victory died fighting. Her first officer, alone on the bridge, piloted the damaged ship directly into a Coalition dreadnought. The explosion was visible even from Earth's surface, a brief sun lighting up the night sky. The Coalition fleet reached Earth orbit. They had lost 93 ships, nearly 40% of their force, but they had won. Earth's fleet was destroyed. Now came the final phase, orbital bombardment and invasion. Then everything changed. Sensors detected new contacts emerging from faster-than-light travel. Hundreds of ships, not human, not Coalition. They came from dozens of different species, all former subjects of the Coalition who had risen in rebellion. The lead ship broadcast on all frequencies. It was a Tilrian female, the same one that Captain Barnes had rescued months ago from the supply depot. "I am General Tira Ven of the Tilrian Liberation Fleet. We have watched humanity fight for their freedom with courage that shames us. We watched them refuse to surrender even when defeat was certain. We watched them inspire hope in a galaxy that had forgotten what hope looked like. Now we fight with them. Coalition Fleet, you face not just Earth, but an alliance of free people who will no longer kneel to your tyranny." 400 rebel ships engaged the Coalition fleet from behind. War Master Thexal, caught between Earth's orbital defenses and this new threat, found himself in a desperate situation. His ships were already damaged and depleted from the brutal fight through the solar system. Now he faced fresh enemy forces and had nowhere to retreat. Admiral Lang, watching from an orbital station, coordinated with General Tira Ven. Together, they commanded the combined human and rebel forces, turning the Coalition's advantage into a trap. Commander Kira Walsh led her remaining fighters in a final desperate charge, targeting the Coalition flagship. Her squadron, reduced to just 30 fighters from the original 200, dove through the chaos of battle. They launched every missile they had at the flagship's command tower. The missiles hit home. The flagship's bridge exploded, killing War Master Thexal and his command staff. The Coalition fleet, without their leader. 3 months after the battle for Earth, the galaxy was burning with rebellion. News of the Coalition's defeat had spread like wildfire through every sector, every system, every world where oppressed species lived under Coalition rule. For the first time in 3,000 years, the Empire looked vulnerable. Ambassador Claire Martinez walked through the corridors of the newly established Alliance headquarters on a liberated moon. She was in her mid-40s, a career diplomat who had spent years negotiating trade deals before first contact. Now she represented humanity in building a coalition of rebel species. The headquarters buzzed with activity. Representatives from 70 different species worked together, planning operations, sharing intelligence, coordinating resistance. It was chaos, but it was organized chaos, and it gave Claire hope. She entered the main council chamber where General Tira Ven was presenting military strategy to the assembled representatives. The Tilrian general had become the de facto military leader of what they now called the Alliance of Free Species. "We have confirmed rebellions on 43 coalition-controlled worlds," Tira explained, gesturing to a holographic map of the galaxy. "These are not small protests. These are armed uprisings. The coalition is stretched thin, trying to suppress them all." Claire took her seat beside Jake Morris's brother, Lieutenant Dan Foster. Dan had survived the war and now served as a Special Forces advisor to the Alliance. He still carried grief for his brother Ryan, but he channeled it into cold determination. "The coalition is fracturing," Dan said, studying the map, "but they still control the core sectors. If we want to end this war, we need to strike at their heart, prove that nowhere is safe." General Tira Ven nodded. "Agreed. I propose we attack Sector Base Primus. It is a major headquarters, heavily defended but symbolically crucial. If we can take it, we prove the rebellion is not just surviving but winning." Claire listened to the debate that followed. Military representatives argued over tactics and risk. Some felt they should consolidate their gains before pushing deeper into coalition space. Others wanted aggressive action before the coalition could reorganize. Finally, the vote was taken. The Alliance Council authorized Operation Strike Back, a major offensive against Sector Base Primus. Jake Morris would command Earth's rebuilt fleet, 43 new ships constructed in a massive effort over the past 3 months. Combined with Tira's 400 ships, they would have enough force to challenge the heavily defended base. The planning took 2 weeks. Intelligence agents, including rescued prisoners who had worked at the base, provided detailed information about defenses and vulnerabilities. Dan Foster proposed a daring infiltration mission to sabotage the base's defenses from within. "Let me lead the team," Dan volunteered. "I have experience with this kind of operation." Claire looked at him with concern. "Dan, this is extremely dangerous. You do not have to prove anything." "This is not about proving anything," Dan said quietly. "This is about finishing what my brother started. Ryan died protecting civilians from coalition tyranny. I am going to make sure his sacrifice mattered." Admiral Jake Morris, now commanding Earth's reformed fleet, approved the mission. He understood Dan's need for purpose, for revenge transformed into something constructive. He had felt the same way after losing his own father in the battle for Earth. The Alliance fleet assembled in a neutral system, far from coalition patrols. It was an impressive sight, ships from dozens of species unified under a common purpose. Earth's vessels flew in formation with Tilrian cruisers, Korath trading ships converted to warships, and Vorxian heavy carriers. Jake addressed his captains before departure. "We are no longer fighting just for Earth. We are fighting for every species that has suffered under coalition rule. That is a heavy responsibility, but it is also our strength. The coalition fights for dominance. We fight for freedom. That makes all the difference." The fleet jumped to faster-than-light travel and raced toward Sector Base Primus. Meanwhile, Dan Foster and his team of 30 Special Forces soldiers prepared for their infiltration mission. They would arrive first disguised as coalition prisoners being transported for processing. The transport ship that carried Dan's team was actually a captured coalition vessel, complete with proper identification codes. They approached Sector Base Primus broadcasting standard prisoner transfer protocols. The base's automated systems accepted their credentials and directed them to a docking bay. Dan and his team wore prisoner uniforms over their combat gear. They were guarded by 4 team members dressed in coalition security armor. As they disembarked, they were met by actual coalition guards who scanned their transfer documents. 30 prisoners from the rebellions in Sector 7, the fake guard explained. High-value targets for interrogation. The coalition guards barely looked at the prisoners, used to processing thousands of captured rebels. They directed the group to a holding facility and moved on to their next task. Once the real guards were out of sight, Dan's team shed their prisoner uniforms and activated their combat gear. We have 4 hours before the fleet arrives, Dan said quietly. We need to reach the power core and the defense control center. Teams Alpha and Bravo, you take the defenses. Team Charlie, with me to the power core. Move fast, stay quiet, and remember your training. They split up and moved through the station's corridors with practiced silence. Coalition personnel they encountered were quickly and quietly neutralized. Dan's team reached a service shaft that led down toward the station's core systems. The fighting started when a security patrol discovered the bodies of neutralized guards. Alarms blared throughout the station. Dan's teams were forced to fight their way through increasingly heavy resistance. Forget quiet, Dan ordered. Fighting withdrawal to the objectives. Use everything we have. The Special Forces teams fought like demons through the station's corridors. They used their knowledge of the layout to set ambushes, using grenades and shaped charges to collapse passages behind them. Coalition security forces, trained for prisoner control and riot suppression, were unprepared for actual soldiers who fought with lethal efficiency. Dan's team reached the power core with 10 minutes to spare before the fleet was due to arrive. He began placing explosive charges at key points while his team held the entrance against waves of coalition reinforcements. Charges set, Dan reported. Timer set for 30 minutes. That gives us time to reach the extraction point. But coalition forces had sealed the corridors between the power core and the landing bays. Dan's team was trapped. All teams abort mission, Dan ordered. Get to the ships and get out. That is an order. Sir, what about you? His second-in-command asked over the radio. I will make sure these charges do not get disarmed. Now go! Dan sealed himself in the power core control room, using the security systems to lock down access. Through the monitors, he watched his teams fighting their way back to the landing bays. Most of them would make it, he thought. That was enough. The Alliance fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel in perfect formation. Jake Morris stood on his flagship's bridge, immediately assessing the tactical situation. Sector Base Primus was heavily defended by 200 coalition warships and multiple orbital fortresses. All ships engage at will, Jake ordered. Focus fire on the fortresses. Fighters clear their point defenses. The battle was fierce from the first moment. Coalition forces, having received warning from the station about infiltrators, were ready for attack. But they were not ready for the coordinated assault from so many rebel species working together. Human ships used aggressive hit-and-run tactics. Tillrian cruisers provided heavy firepower. Quarath vessels jammed coalition communications. Vorxian carriers launched wave after wave of fighters. The combined fleet fought with a unity that surprised the coalition defenders. 30 minutes into the battle, the power core of Sector Base Primus exploded. Dan Foster's charges detonated in a massive chain reaction that knocked out the station's weapons and shields. The orbital fortresses, dependent on the station's power grid, went dark and helpless. Jake watched the explosion and knew what it meant. He closed his eyes briefly, thinking of Dan Foster and all the others who had sacrificed everything for this moment. Then he opened them and continued the battle. Without the station's support, the coalition fleet found itself outmatched. The rebel forces pressed their advantage mercilessly. Coalition ships were destroyed or forced to retreat. After 8 hours of brutal fighting, the coalition commander surrendered the remaining forces. Sector Base Primus was captured, a stunning victory that sent shockwaves through coalition space. The base had stood for 800 years, never once falling to enemy attack. Its capture proved the rebellion was not just a nuisance, but a genuine threat. In coalition core territory, High Chancellor Vorton received the news with barely contained rage. His advisors cowered before him as he paced his chambers like a caged predator. How is this possible? Vorton demanded. How can primitives and slaves defeat our fleets? They fight differently, his military advisor explained nervously. They do not follow traditional battle doctrine. They coordinate multiple species in ways we have never seen, and they fight with a desperation that our forces cannot match. Then we need to fight more brutally, Vorton growled. I want total,